Greetings, Taku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all another Discussion of the Week video segment right here on Otaku Assemble. Weekly, as always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's Discussion of the Week video segment. But before I jump into this week's Discussion of the Week, you guys know what's coming. Yeah, I've been doing this for like 2 weeks now. You know what's coming. Pledge to my comic book miniseries, Totems, on Kickstarter.com. Link is annotated above. Just click it. It'll bring you to the page. We're almost there. Pledge. Alright. So, with that being said, now let's jump into this week's Discussion of the Week topic. And this week's topic comes from... Wait a minute. Okay, alright. This week's topic comes from Kratos Breaks. And he asked, the Discussion of the Week, video games. What makes a good video game and what needs to have, what it needs to have, grammar, what it needs to have, like plot, characters, graphics, story, art, and especially originality. What are your favorite video games? How have video games evolved throughout the decades? How are video games, how have video games affected and influenced us in good ways and bad ways? How could the video game industry be more creative so that they create new consoles and games that will enrich our creative thoughts and culture? And most important, have fun. Alright, a lot of questions in this topic, and some of these I'm going to answer very briefly, if at all, and some of these I'll go more into depth, because I think at the root of all these questions, I think what the main topic is it's video games. I think from what this sounds like to me is that this is talking about video games in regards to last week's topic when I discussed the lack of creativity in today's society. And I think that's at the root of this topic. So I'll try to answer these questions in regards to that. Alright. Okay, so first off, what makes a good video game and what it needs to have? Well, you just listed everything it needed to have in the question when you talked about the plot, the characters, the graphics, the story, art, and originality. Video games, let me make something clear. Video games are no different than any other medium. Every other entertainment medium, such as every other entertainment medium, like literature, like film, like television, animation, so on and so forth. Video games has to play to the same rules that they do. Okay, you gotta have all these things. You gotta have them. You gotta have a good plot. You gotta have good characters. You gotta have good graphics. You gotta have you gotta have some sense of originality in your concept. All those things are universal. The one thing that does separate video games when you're talking about what makes a good one or a bad one is you have to find a way to use all of those things I just mentioned to engage your audience or the player through gameplay. That's the hurdle that video games has to deal with that the other ones don't really have to. And you'll notice that in video games that try to copy the others, doesn't work out. I.e., Uncharted. I'm sorry. The point of a video game is to play it, not to watch it. I'm kind of tired of this fad of cinematic video games. If I want a fucking movie, I'll buy a fucking movie. I don't buy a video game to sit there for a fucking hour watching cutscenes. I buy it so I can play it. Okay? Uncharted. Yes, I just did that. Anywho, so that brings me to what are some of my favorite video games? Some of my favorite video games, some of the franchises I like. Number one, I have always been a fan of the Final Fantasy franchise. However, the latest games in the franchise I don't care for. What I'm talking about is let's see, the earliest Final Fantasy I'm a fan of is 6. The latest one I'm a fan of is 10. Well, 11 was okay. 12 I didn't care for. 13 is just straight garbage. And I don't really care for any of the other 13s at this point. So yeah, I am still a fan of the old games though. The Kingdom Hearts franchise, I'm a fan of those. Let me see, other franchises. The Mortal Kombat franchise I like. Don't care for Street Fighter, or what's the other one? Tekken I used to like, but ever since Tekken Tag Tournament, I haven't cared for that franchise, and since the last one, I just don't give a shit about it at all anymore. Let me see, other franchises that I like. Let's focus on the ones I like, and not the ones that I don't like. So the ones I do like, the DBZ Budokai series, the Budokai, not the Tenkaichi series. Tenkaichi series can eat a dick. The Budokai series I like. The Pokemon games, for the most part, I like. Well, the ones I've played, I've liked, and I haven't played them all. For the most part, like Gens 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 5, I like. Wait a minute. Black and White, is that Generation 5 or Generation 6? I forget. There's so many fucking generations of them. But like the first 2 gens and the latest ones I like. The previous gen with Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, I didn't care for those games at all. And then the gen before that with Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, I didn't play those, so I don't know. I didn't play those. But yeah, okay. And let me see, other ones. Not to spend too much time on these. I mean, typically, I can pretty much. I do like sports games. Like the Madden series, the NCAA series. For the most part, I like those. The UFC games, I'm a huge fan of. I used to be a big fan of the SmackDown franchise. Like for a good amount of years, I had every fucking SmackDown. Like I was getting the new one each year it came out. But that shit, I cut that off when 07 came out. I was like, fuck it, I'm not getting it. And jumped back in it with 09, which was 09 was decent. 2010 was garbage, and that's when I cut my ties with WWE. I was like, fuck you all, because these games are bullshit now. So after 2010, I cut that off. The Prince of Persia Sands of Time trilogy. Huge fan of those games. Love those. The DOA franchise. I like those. Even the Extreme Beach Volleyball offshoots, I like those too. Anywho, I think I spent too much time talking about my favorite video games, so let's get on to the rest of these. Okay. How have video games evolved through the decades? Okay, well, it's obvious. I mean, do I really have to go into detail about how we went from the fucking... Do I have to go into detail about how we went from Pong to... What was the latest big game? Oh, okay. Do I have to go into detail about how we went from Pong to Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance? I don't think that needs to be explained. How are video games, how have they affected, remember, grammar people, how have video games affected or influenced us in good ways and bad ways? Okay, how have video games affected us in good ways? In good ways, video games, I think at this point in time, have finally managed to establish themselves as a legitimate form of entertainment, especially as a legitimate form of storytelling. There are a lot of good games that have a lot of good stories. I would even, and these stories have, these stories do have implications as far as contributing to the education of youth. And this is what I'm talking about, to give you all some examples. My dad, funny story, my dad went apeshit when he found out that I was playing a game called Prince of Persia, because he immediately assumed when he heard the title, and then he came into the living room one day and he saw me playing it, and he assumed that that game had some type of historical reference in it, which, even though it is a fantasy game, there are historical references in the game, like some of the architecture and some of the events that take place in the first game and in the third game do actually reference history. Granted, one could argue it's probably referencing for the sake of referencing, but anywho, but my dad liked the fact that I was playing a video game that had something to do with history. And that was good enough for him. And he liked that. It was kind of weird, threw me the fuck off, but in hindsight, I can see why. Assassin's Creed is a very good example of this. How many fucking kids, show of hands right now, how many of you, not even kids, players in general, how many of you motherfuckers watching this video right now learned something about the time periods of the Assassin's Creed games by playing Assassin's Creed? Show of hands. I'm pretty sure a lot of you learned something about that time period that you didn't know of because you were playing the games. Why? Because what Ubisoft does, what they did with Prince of Persia, same thing they do with Assassin's Creed, is they actually do use historical references in their stories. That is a good thing. How many of you have looked up Gilgamesh, Yojimbo, or looked up the meaning behind Sephiroth's name because those names are referenced in Final Fantasy? And of course, those all refer to the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the oldest epic, the world's oldest epic. Yojimbo, the wandering swordsman, the samurai for hire in Japanese culture, and then of course Sephiroth having to do with the what is it? Is it the, what belief is that? Is that the Tao? Is that Taoism? Is that, or what does Sephiroth? Who is that? Oh, and what was the other one? Bahamut. I think, what is Bahamut? Hindu? Yeah, so all the Hindu references and all that jazz. You see what I'm saying? That's when video games are good. When their references, when when they use culture and history and whatnot in their stories, and just through the act of curiosity, children will go and look this stuff up and they'll get educated. That's when video games are good. Like I mentioned earlier, video games have gotten to the point now where they do have the potential to be legitimate forms of storytelling. A lot of games, a lot of good games have really good fucking stories. But that brings me to where video games, where they have affected us in a bad way. We gotta find out how to get a hold on all of the graphic shit that is now put into video games. What I'm saying is this, hear me out before y'all try to kill the fucking messenger. Hear me out. I'm not saying we gotta do away with all graphic material in video games. I'm not saying that at all. What we do need to get rid of though, we have to find a better way of policing this shit. Because I kid you not, if I had a motherfucking dime for every time I had a parent bitch about the material in a video game because they didn't screen the material for their child when they bought it for them. And then they want to turn around and have the audacity to bitch, whine, moan, and complain about the graphic material in the game when you didn't do your job as a fucking parent and screen the material to begin with. That is not the company's fault, and that is not the child's fault. That's your fault, mom and dad. Why? Because the child can't buy a $60 game on his own. Somebody got to be buying it for him. And what the fuck happened with stores? Do stores even check for ID anymore when you purchase a mature game? Because back in the G, I actually got carded a lot of time at stores when I was in high school and shit, when I wanted to buy a mature game. Now granted, by the time I was like a junior, by the time I was 16, I got past that because my height just kind of gave away like, okay, you're old enough to have this game. But like when I was like 13 and 14 and shit, yeah, I got carded at the store. They were like, oh, this is a mature game. Is your parent around? And if my parent wasn't there, I couldn't buy the game. Do stores do that anymore? Because I don't think they do. But hang on a minute. Because I just dropped the bomb on mommy and daddy. I kind of said, you know, do your fucking job because they're not screening the material for their kids, right? But hang on a minute, because they're not the only ones at fault. Mom, dad, hang on a minute, because you guys aren't the only ones. Companies do this shit too. And this is what I mean. Companies pander What I mean is, when I'm talking about, as you all know, the unnecessary, gratuitous violence and sex and shit, yeah, companies purposely pander to that shit. What I mean is this: EA, the shit y'all did with Dead Space, yeah, you know what you did. What about that bullshit? Oh my god, that bullshit Dante's Inferno game. That's a fucking monstrosity, because that game was nothing but pandering and had no fucking context to the Divine Comedy whatsoever. If my kid came to me and said, "Daddy, I want to play Dante's Inferno, will you buy it for me?" I'm like, "No, son, go to the fucking bookshelf, pull Daddy's copy of the fucking Divine Comedy, sit there and read about it. I don't want you playing that bullshit, because it has nothing to do with the source material and it's nothing but fucking pandering." Yeah, the companies do that shit too. And let me put it to you like this, because this is the catch-22 that I think the companies find themselves in, and it's all a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, I'm getting heated right now because it's too damn hot in this room. Okay, the companies, they claim, right? They claim that, oh, we're not being taken seriously enough as a legitimate industry, so we're going to start throwing out products that are raunchy and racy and, ooh, look, we got ass and tits and we got graphic violence and gore. Yeah, we're just as mature as all the other big boys. But what you're doing is pandering. So in the eyes of distinguished, and not even distinguished, but just in the eyes of anybody with common fucking decency and common sense, we'll see that this shit is transparent. They'll be sitting up there like, why is this shit in the game? And you know what happens? When you get caught because all you're doing is pandering, then everybody fucking looks down on you. It's like, oh, look, they're so cute. Because let's face it, video games still get the stigma of being just for kids, right? That they're a kid medium. But when you turn around and you start pandering to try to make yourself look more mature, it's the same thing as the 13-year-old girl who starts putting on a bunch of makeup because she wants to appear more mature, when clearly it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen this, like the teenage girls who wear too much makeup because they think it'll make them look more attractive, when really they end up looking like clowns. That's exactly what the fuck it is. And at that point, no one will take you seriously, because look at what you're doing. The video game industry, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. That's how video games affect us in a bad way. Oh, and also I can make an entire video separate talking about all of the psychological implications that exposure to graphic material in video games can have on the youth. That fucking debate has been going on as far back as the Columbine incident. All I'm going to say on that incident is this. People like to point the blame at video games, right? Just like people like to point the blame at guns. You know, oh, people don't kill people. Guns, oh no, what is it? It's guns don't kill people kill people, right? So, video games don't kill people. Or video games don't force kids to lose their shit. Kids lose their shit. No. All I'm going to say on that whole issue is this. Disturbed children with exposure to video games become harmful. I say that in the same vein that, oh, guns don't kill people, people kill people. No. People with guns kill people. So, video games don't influence children badly. Children influence themselves badly, apparently. No. Disturbed children with graphic video games get influenced badly. That's all I'm going to say on that. Think about it. For fuck's sake. That's how video games can influence us negatively. What is that? My 20 minutes? So now I'm going to try my best to finish out this video. How could the video game industry be more creative so they create new consoles and games that will enrich our creative thoughts and cultures, and most important, have fun, this, that, and the other. To be honest with you all, I don't fucking know. How can video games be more creative? I don't fucking know. To be honest with you all, at this point, I don't fucking care. The reason why is because of this. There are tons of fucking video games on the market right now that are creative, that are innovative, and that are fun, but you don't know about it. And when I say there are tons, let me go ahead and tell you their numbers are legion, but you don't know about it. Why? Because they're not mainstream. They're not mainstream. They're not the ones with their commercials on your fucking networks. They're not the ones with advertisements all over the fucking websites. But you want to know why? Because of what I mentioned in last week's video. The creative, innovative shit gets overshadowed by the big budget shit. So, for those of you all who feel like video games are in a rut where there are no creative video games and they're not innovative and all that fucking jazz, I highly implore you all to do some fucking homework, because there are games out there. I've played some of them. Some of the free to download games online. I've played some of them. They were fun as fucking hell. They were fun as all hell. And they were pretty goddamn good. They do exist. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up by saying this. For any of you all who actually, if you do legitimately care about video games and care about the video game industry and all that type of jazz, pretty much I'm talking about the 35 of you who thumbed up this topic. Do not stop at this fucking video. What I want you guys to do is, I want you guys to check out a show I follow called Extra Credits. You can Google it, you'll find it, because I think they have their own website, extracredits.com, as well as they are on Penny Arcade, and I think they are still on theescapist.com. Check out Extra Credits. It is a weekly show, a weekly web show dedicated to video games. They have very good videos, very analytic videos. They're asking all the right questions, and their videos force you to think about this material. They know what they're talking about. The crew is made up of video game designers. They know what they're talking about. These guys do their homework. They spend a lot of time, effort in these fucking videos. And if you guys really do care about video games and you want more in-depth and more thought-provoking discussion about video games than I can provide you, check them out. I highly recommend it. I'll probably even go as far as to link them in the description box so you all can find their website. Really good fucking show. With that being said, wrapping up this week's discussion of the week, and as always, guys, in the comments below, leave your suggestions for next week's discussion of the week and thumb up the one you like. And guys, I know because some of you all have asked me this, so I'll just reiterate. If you have suggested a discussion of the week topic in the past and I haven't done it because it didn't get votes, by all means, bring it back. Bring it back. I don't shun away topics because they don't get votes. If they just don't get enough votes, that means they don't get enough votes at that time. That don't mean they can't come back. So if you guys still have topics that you want me to discuss, by all means, suggest them. But of course, you know, majority rules. Whichever one gets the most votes is the one I do next week. Coming up later this weekend, Comic Book Hollywood for Watchmen, Smallville Season 2 review. Don't forget to pledge to my comic book miniseries totems on Kickstarter.com. We are almost there, people. We are almost there. Alright, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I'm signing off, and until next time, peace.